Hi, I'm Dawn Damari, and you're listening to and watching another episode of A Teaspoon of Healing. My guest for today is Guryan Tighe. Guryan is a leadership coach, workshop facilitator, and communications strategist. Hi, Guryan.
Hi, nice to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
Hi, nice to have you here. And how are you doing today?
I'm feeling great. How
Oh,
about you?
good to hear. I'm feeling great too.
Good.
It's a nice day, sunny day, October. So, you work with clients on addressing and accessing their fears to help propel them to success. So, before we talk a little bit about your background, do you have anything to share from your life story about how you worked with fear?
Yeah, I mean, I'll actually use a recent example. The book writing journey is it can be a challenging one, a very exciting one, but a challenging one. And about
Hmm.
10 years ago, when I started working with fear, I had a lot of strange responses asking me what I was doing, and that you can't build a business off of fear and X, Y, and Z. And over time, in the conversations that I was having, I was learning so many fascinating things about fear that I kind of decided I wanted to share that with the world. And my fear started getting really loud, like, why me? What do you have to say?
Hmm.
What? Why not somebody else? And so over the course of time, it kind of kept me quiet. And we'll talk about this a little more today, but what I started to realize was what I was doing it for was more important than my discomfort around it. So my doubt each step of the way uh, really started to inform me of the importance of it, and that it really mattered to me. And so fear has been with me. I think it's partly why I chose it. I believe all research is me search. So I am
Hmm.
not devoid of fear. I could give you numerous examples in my life of where I have fear has shown up, and that's why I had to get so curious about it to see what why it was here and how it might actually be here to benefit us.
Oh, great, great. Yeah, because that's something that we all struggle with, right? With fear, and we will talk about a little bit more about how you look at it and how you help people with it, which is a little bit different. We often hear about conquering fear, and you work with it a little bit differently, which I like.
That's right.
And so, briefly, do you mind telling the people listening or watching this about your background and what you do?
Sure. So I started out in the communications umbrella, everything you could put a relations after, public, influencer, analyst, investor, and that really led me to the people. I love people. I think they're fascinating. And so I became chief
Me too.
culture officer for a while. Um, and then I've always cared. I've cared about bettering the world, the planet. And so I was trying to find companies that were really making an impact. And if there's one thing I'm not afraid to do, it's quit. And I had to quit when leadership wasn't in integrity. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to reverse engineer the process and find out why leaders weren't in integrity. Because I was working for companies that had these big purpose and missions, oftentimes that would be when purpose would be pit against profit. And I
Mhm.
actually think those two things intersect quite well, but the case was that they didn't in these scenarios. And so I left and decided to help leaders be in integrity. And I asked myself, what keeps a leader from being in integrity? And at
Mhm.
first, I thought it was empathy. And so that's what I started my focus on. And it was empathy that led me to fear. Because when we actually understand our fear, empathy becomes a byproduct.
Right, right. So it really is comes down to fear. So when you get through that, then you can work on the empathy. And sometimes the empathy is already there, but the fear might be masking it.
That's right.
It's really interesting. And it's interesting also that you mentioned that some of the companies you worked with, they had you like the culture, you like that their mission, but sometimes the leadership was in the way. So it's not really that they didn't have empathy or they were quote, unquote, bad people or anything like this. It was their fear.
Well, and absolutely. And unfortunately, we fear fear. It's a scary
Yeah.
topic. So people don't want to talk about it. I mean, we're taught to turn away from it. Even if you
Hmm.
think about it, I can give you an example. So we never trained our brains the difference between rational and irrational fear. Rational fear, which is why we have an amygdala in our brain, this is our fear center, is there
Hmm.
to protect our survival. It's the home of fight, flight, freeze, and a really lesser known one called fawn, which is
Hmm.
when you appease the threat, which is the home of people pleasing, which is a very common one today. But if we come back to rational, if you're in the ocean and a shark is swimming towards you, it's that rational fear, that amygdala, that's going to protect you and have you swim towards the shark and punch it in the nose or swim away. But the problem is the irrational fears, those are those what ifs, those future
Mhm.
tense story. What if nobody buys the book? What if I don't have anything to say? What if people disagree with what I have to say? What if, what if, what if? And because our survival isn't at risk, all the cues that our body has been giving us, we've kind of stopped paying attention to. And so we allow those storylines to run and make our decisions for us instead of choosing what we actually intentionally want to choose.
I really like that. And you had mentioned there's a fight response, freeze response, and then the fawn response.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I don't know as much about what the fawn response is. Obviously, the fight, I guess, would be punching the shark when you mentioned the rational fear, which I don't, would work. I don't know if it works or not. And the what is was the other one?
Light would
The
be swimming away.
flight, get away, which most people probably will choose to do.
Most people
And
probably choose to
and
do.
then the fawn response. I'm not sure how that would relate to the sharks, but I guess in general,
Yeah, it's a little different. That one I see much more in the irrational fear when we're dealing with those
yes,
future tense. Somebody might, in relationships, someone might not speak to what they need because they
okay,
don't want somebody to leave. It could just
right.
be, it could be, or yesing or shoulding yourself. Shoulding is a very common appeasing tactic where you're, because we have, certain fears we have wired into us, like the fear of rejection. And so a lot of
Mhm.
people will say yes, they'll appease things to be liked instead of choose things that are actually true for them.
Oh, okay. And so for an irrational fear, how can people, so I guess you're faced with the irrational fears, either the what ifs, um, or what if, like, yeah, what if, like, for example, if your book doesn't sell, nobody reads it, which is not going to be true, which is not true, obviously. I mean, we're talking here today. So people are resonating with it. So your body can't really tell the difference between a rational threat, like the shark in the ocean that you see if you're swimming out in the ocean, or a fear of either a book not selling or if you're starting a business, the business failing. So the body can't really tell.
Well, so the interesting thing is, it can. We just stop
Oh,
paying
okay.
attention to it. So the important
Okay.
thing is to learn the language of our fear. So first, I do want to just frame this up. I actually think fear is the most beautiful thing that there is. I think fear has more information for us than any emotion, but we fear it, so we've turned away from it. If we can actually start to turn towards it, I believe it's our greatest teacher, and it's showing us exactly where we want to grow. The reason, and I'm going to come back to what you just asked, but the reason for that is from a rational perspective, your fear is trying to protect your survival. From an
Right.
irrational perspective, your fear is trying to protect who you are. The second that you grow, the second that you get outside of your comfort zone, your fear has to do all this work to figure out who you are. Fear doesn't like to do extra work. So it's telling you to stay where you are. This is kind of like where the devil gets the devil, the devil gets its legs. And so the important thing is really to understand that when your fear comes up, it's a little ironic, but it's telling you where you want to grow.
Oh,
So,
okay.
if we come back to a different example, maybe I found myself over the years needing to present. Presenting is it's a very common fear for people. Presenting in
Oh,
public,
for sure.
very common fear. Okay, and
Yes.
we all have different kind of tells, if you will. So maybe you're not swimming towards the shark or swimming away, but ironically, for me, when I'm in fear, one of my tells is, and this is something I've worked on over the years, but I get cold and my teeth
Oh,
start to
okay.
chatter. You can't get up on stage and talk about the value of fear when your teeth are chattering.
That's true.
But what that fear is coming up to show me is, hey, you know what? This presentation matters. Are you prepared? Are you too
Hmm.
prepared? Are you so connected to your talking points that you're not willing to be in dialogue with the audience? There's so many things, but ultimately fear is showing us what's important to us. And so what really matters is, how can I stay present, and I'm going to use the phrase, in my body in those moments, because when we're in fear, we can give our power away. So all of
Hmm.
my energy is going to, what do these people think, rather than how do I want to be here. And we can talk about some of the ways that we can neurologically move from our amygdala to our prefrontal cortex, which is the home of decision making, creativity, connection, and empathy.
Oh, I like that. I like that. So if we're living in when we're in the fear, so we're in that amygdala, we do have the ability to get into the prefrontal cortex. Why can't I talk today? Prefrontal cortex. And that's where creativity flows, decision making, and the fear doesn't reside there.
No, it's two different parts of the brain, which is amazing. I find the brain just fascinating. But so we can
Yeah,
actually move from our fear center to this creativity and connection center, if you will. That's not what it's officially called, but through three elements, I can talk about those. So one is
sure.
curiosity, one is purpose, and one is gratitude. So let's go back to that what if scenario. So let me make
Hmm.
that what if for the presentation itself. What if people don't come? What if people don't like what I have to say? What if it looks like people are sleeping in the audience? What if, what if? Okay, so the really important, curious thing to do is there's two questions to pose. What am I telling myself is true, and what is actually true? What am I telling myself is true? People aren't going to come, they're not going to be interested. What is actually true? This matters a lot to me. I love this topic. If I have something that matters to one person, then it was worth it. Okay, now I'm grounded in my center and I know what I'm doing this for. Again, purpose is another one. So my kind of tagline for purpose is my why is bigger than I. What I'm doing it for matters more than a little discomfort. And actually, that's where we grow. So, again, if I come back to that, what was true, if I impact one person, then this was worth it. So, okay, if there's one person out there that this resonates with, then my discomfort's a little worth it. Okay, well, now that has me in service of purpose. That's something I can stand in. And the last one, gratitude gets thrown around a lot, like it's woo.
Yes.
Actually, from a neurological perspective, when we express appreciation and gratitude, all of our brain activity is in that prefrontal cortex.
Oh,
So again, your brain doesn't know what you have to be grateful for. You don't have to be grateful for the very thing that you're nervous about. You could be grateful for, you even started by saying, what a beautiful day. That works.
yes.
It could be
Okay.
friends. It could be the weather. It could be your able body. It could be so many
Hmm.
things. We have so many ways to actually shift there so that we can make conscious choices.
Oh, I really like that. So focusing on just the gratitude, just focusing on something, even if it's not even related to this, I guess, a presentation. So if I was going to give a presentation and I'm really nervous about it because I relate to that because giving presentations is not my favorite thing to do. And I have a lot of fear around that. So doing that, and I guess getting up before you get up on the stage or wherever it is, just focusing on being grateful that it's a beautiful day that day, or grateful that people are there, or grateful that I even have the opportunity to do this, as somebody allowed me this opportunity. And
Absolutely.
then that can get you out of that fear. That's really
Yeah.
interesting.
And remembering like that kind of nervousness also makes us feel like we're alive. There's a
Yes.
very fine line to me between fear and courage. Very fine line. If you think of any courageous decision that you've made in your life, I'm willing
Hmm.
to bet that right before it, you were in fear.
Yes,
Fear
that's
is
true.
actually showing us where to apply our courage. Fear is when we hold on to the inhale. Courage is actually when we step into it. And when we use those elements like purpose and curiosity to see what is true and what are we in service to, we can close the gap between our fear and our courage so we can step into it rather than feeling like we need to leap so far.
I really like that. And so besides, so you said gratitude, purpose, and then there was one more that I can't remember.
Curiosity.
Curiosity. So when you're with the curiosity, can you kind of explore why you're afraid? Does that help?
Yeah, and that's why breaking down with those two questions of what am I telling myself is true, stories are really impactful. Our brains are not invested in what's best for us. Our brains are invested in the information we give it. So if I'm
Okay.
saying, I don't have, what if I don't have anything to say? What if people aren't interested? Then my brain is going to go and look for every data point that validates that story.
Hmm. Hmm.
Whereas if I can instead connect to the what is true storyline, which is I love this topic. I think this can help people. If it helps one person, it was worth it. Oh, okay. Well, now my brain is going to look for those. How do we bring your energy? How do you get excited? How do you connect with one person out there? It's a totally, we write the story that we want to star in. So, what story are you writing yourself? Is it a story that you're telling yourself based in fear, which is actually showing you where you want to grow? Or is it the truth that's owning that? Getting
Yeah, I
curious
really
is
like
the
that.
is the baseline in.
Yeah, I really like that. And now we had talked a little bit right before we started recording. We had talked a little bit that your approach is a little different when you help people. Well, you hear about fear a lot. We hear about you just got to conquer that fear. Just go get it. Just go get what you want, but you got to conquer the fear. And that's how you get over it. And for a lot of people, like myself included, I think that makes people freeze up. I don't know, because maybe it's overwhelming, the fear. And so your approach is more about understanding and working with it.
Absolutely. The worst thing you can just say to somebody that's angry is calm down.
That's
Same,
true.
same. When someone's in fear, get over it. Not very
Yeah.
helpful.
No.
Again, going back to we have a fear center wired into our brain. We're not overcoming it. We're not getting
No.
away from it. It has so much value if we can understand why it's there. We all understand the rational perspective. This is also so interesting to me. So if your survival is at risk, it causes connection. You would ask your greatest adversary for help. However, when we're in
Mhm.
irrational fear, it causes disconnection, isolation, and avoidance, right?
Oh,
And
that
that
makes
has to do with so many things like the misperception that vulnerability is a weakness, all of these elements. But we understand rational fear. We don't understand irrational fear
Mhm.
because we turned away from it. So it's not about conquering or overcoming. It's about learning from it. Again, I believe nothing has more information for us for it, but we need to start understanding the language it has, understanding why it's showing up. And again, if we come back to all it's doing is trying to protect us. So
Mhm.
fear and pain are kind of best friends. If you've ever experienced a pain in your life, that
Yeah.
moment in time, fear came around to pain and said, I'm going to make sure that you never feel like that for the rest of your life ever again.
Yeah. I
Which,
relate to that.
of course, and maybe in that moment that made sense, but over time, it's no longer reflective of our now self. But that old protective mechanism kind of blocks us from meeting the now moment the way that we want to.
Yeah, so for when you had mentioned the pain, that when you get a pain, and this could be a physical or an emotional pain, the brain or the amygdala, right, will do anything can to prevent that from happening again. So this can also be with a physical pain. So for
Absolutely.
example, if I hurt myself doing something, even once we're healed, can we still be afraid to do it, for example? Or it could also be like an emotional pain, like we'll just avoid that situation so it won't happen again.
And not only more in like the case of the emotional situation, it amorphs with us, if you will. So for instance, let's say there's a kid on a playground, elementary
Mhm.
school. That morning they had a very vivid imagination and they came to school stylistically expressing themselves in a very unique way. Let's say they got bullied. Let's say they
Yeah.
even got beat up. Okay,
Ugh.
so the next day they go home, maybe they're in jeans and a gray t-shirt. Okay, now you fast forward to high school. Maybe it's time to express yourself artistically. Well,
Mhm.
maybe they dial it in or see what other people are doing and do that instead of what is true
Yeah.
for them. Now you get to college and it's giving a presentation. Maybe they join a group and become the silent member instead of one of
Mhm.
the lead voices, so forth and so on. So you just repeat this, make yourself smaller, make yourself smaller, make yourself quiet, quiet,
Mhm.
quiet your voice. Now, on the case of that playground, that may have been really important for their
Yes.
protection, so they weren't beat up. The problem is that if we're not in conversation with our fear and pain throughout our lives, then that starts automatic reactions, because this is also amazing and wonderful. But every time that we make a decision, we fire a neuron down a pathway. And if we're in a
Right.
similar circumstance and react the same way again and again, that pathway becomes what they call a superhighway. And once it's a superhighway, your brain loses the ability to realize there's a decision point. It's an automatic reaction. So in the case of that kid, protecting themselves, that was just the automatic get small, get small, get small, get small.
Mhm.
And you don't even feel like it's a choice. It's just, this is who I am. This is just the way I am. I actually don't believe in that. I believe we are what we practice. What's
Yes.
incredible is we can unwire things from our subconscious if we look at them, if we pause and slow down and realize that, wait, that may have served me at a time, but it doesn't anymore. And the fascinating thing is, what's showing us to look at that is our fear. Our fear comes up in those moments. And again, most of us have started to ignore those cues. Mine was getting
Mhm.
cold, a really common one for a lot of people is holding your breath. Some people's
Mhm.
palms get sweaty. It's the opposite of mine. Some people's shoulders get tight.
Yes. That's
Another.
mine.
Okay, great. So those are
Yes.
all cues to pause and then start to ask yourself again, what am I telling myself is true? I'm going to get
Mhm.
rejected. They're not going to like me. They're
Yeah.
going to, and what is actually true? Mm, I have an idea here. I have something I want to contribute. I actually do know what art piece I want to make. Even if it's not putting it out there, the first thing is actually not about how it's received, it's breaking the pattern within.
Yes, yes. And I really like what you said about that playground analogy. So if somebody had been bullied for doing something when they were really young, it just kind of carries over. But you continue to do it, and you don't really even know. It's kind of even unconscious. You're still doing those patterns. Like, for example, that the boy or girl that you had mentioned now making themselves small, wearing gray clothes, like you said, or just not participating, being like a sideline member in a group rather than a leader, even though they have really great leadership qualities. They may have all these things buried within them that they've kind of suppressed.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
does a
We
lot of it go
list
back also into childhood? Like a lot of things, it seems like it goes back to childhood.
Yeah, because those are the things we've had the longest time reinforcing those patterns
Yes.
in. Yeah. And
Yes.
so, sometimes it's helpful to know what those painful moments are. Sometimes they might not be as dramatic as being bullied. But anything
Right.
that causes a pain, yeah, it's likely going to be what creates these protective, and I keep using air quotes because they are meant to keep us safe. Only
Yes.
I think safe is actually being who we are. And I think that those can prevent us from being who we are in service of not being rejected or not being liked. When in actuality, when we are who we are, we actually attract the people that we are resonant with. There's
Yes.
8 billion people in the world. There's no way we could all be resonant with all of them.
No. No.
Yeah,
But sometimes, yeah, if things like that happen, we can play stuff down so we don't get criticized.
absolutely.
And so, for just for example, say you were working with someone who had that experience, as you had mentioned, the child who was bullied for expressing themselves creatively through their clothes, and then they kind of made themselves small. So, how if they're an adult and they guess they do eventually notice it? You know what? This isn't work. It's not serving them. They're not able to either get promoted in their career. They're not able to find successful relationships or start a venture or an art, doing some art, like you had said.
Yeah.
So, how can people get through that?
Yeah, great question. There's a number of ways. I mean, one I think is actually to helping release the pain. Another
Okay.
is actually starting to connect to what's true. And then the third is actually putting practices in place that start that. Part of releasing the pain is even just owning it, even saying out loud that this was hurt. Maybe it's writing it down if it's hard to say out loud. But what it does is it makes that alive. So if we don't acknowledge it, it's almost like that pain just gets frozen in our body, and that our body
Okay.
is reacting from that, again, because that's the truth that we've been telling our brain, whether that's vocally or non-verbally. And so by stating that that was something that you experienced but might not be today is even opening up the reality that there could be a different way. The other
Uh,
piece, if we bring in gratitude, most people are very aware of what pain has caused them and cost them,
mhm.
but not aware of how it serves them. So I
Okay.
might look at that experience and ask somebody, okay, you can tell me all the things that it cost you when you didn't put your voice out there, what you didn't create, how you felt shame, but how did it serve you? Which is a question that is pretty surprising to people in the beginning. But what I find is in those cases, a lot of people develop a lot of empathy for others, a lot of
Hmm.
compassion. They become very aware. Maybe they're incredibly patient people. Maybe there's a whole, like, I'll give you an example. People come to me with the laundry list of why anxiety is so terrible. On the flip side of anxiety being terrible, it contributes to thoughtfulness, detail orientation,
Hmm.
curiosity, awareness, thought. Like, there's so many pieces. But again, if all we're doing is paying mind to the air quote negative, I don't believe in negative and positive, I believe in information. But if all we're doing is looking at those perceived negative attributes, then we're ignoring half or more of the story. And that also starts to show somebody who they actually are. Then you can look at the current circumstance that you're in. Okay, so maybe everyone's not going to love your idea, but are you going to get at risk of being beaten up? Probably not.
No,
But at
probably
the end of
not.
the day,
Probably not.
does everybody's idea matter to you? Maybe a couple of people's, maybe not. Who knows? But like, so now we need to change the game. And then you start reinforcing new practices, because going back to this is just me, no, no, no. We are what we practice. And so we need
That's
to
for
start
sure.
practicing those new things. So it's a combination of elements. But again, we go back to the curiosity, the gratitude, the purpose. Those kind of become the gateways that you can start to engage differently.
I really like that. Now, can you apply those things, the curiosity, purpose, and gratitude, to other things? For example, imposter syndrome. So if somebody is starting a business, or somebody is, I guess they're just either they're newly trained in something and they're starting a new job. They're maybe a young graduate and they feel that they're an imposter, or somebody who is a little older, maybe starting a business or doing something new, putting themselves out there, like you said, making a presentation about a topic that they know a lot about, but they still feel like an imposter.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you bring up a great point, Don, and I will tell you, professionally speaking, imposter syndrome is the number one fear that I hear about, and it is you, irrespective of how much qualifications experience anyone has. This is not irrational. That's why it's an irrational
Oh, okay.
fear.
Oh, it is. Okay, good. Because,
So
yeah,
oftentimes,
that one's a tough one.
sometimes it might have some truth in it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer the imposter syndrome, and then I'm going to lead into a couple of steps and tools that people might be able to use. Because to me, the imposter syndrome is a mask of fear. Okay.
Okay.
And so again, and I'll make this personal, so it's not just hypothetical. My first job ever was at a public relations firm. I had to go through like 12 interviews. You'd think we were saving lives. And
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
when I got it, I was like, oh God, I fooled them. What am I doing here? How can I be here after that many interviews still?
Right.
So my congratulations present to myself was a pair of vanity glasses so that I appeared more intelligent than I was. And the trick that I used was I always had, this dates me, but the thesaurus website up. And
Okay.
whatever I was writing, whenever I was going in for a big conversation, I would use the thesaurus to make sure that I sounded more intelligent. So now, coming at that from an imposter syndrome, self-critical mindset, sure, I could be telling myself I'm not smart enough, I don't have anything to say, they're going to think that I'm stupid. But if I look at that, at what the imposter was actually showing me was, I really care about this job. You know what?
Hmm.
Maybe I didn't pay as much of attention in college as I want to, and I want to rise to this challenge and actually sound as articulate as I want to be. I want to be able to stand up and present myself in a confident way. So again, what framing are we looking at? From one perspective, it could be telling me I'm not enough. From the other perspective, it could be showing me exactly where I want to improve, exactly where I want to be bringing my attention to. So, what many people that have a heightened relationship with their fear have is a self critic. Some
Yes,
people says,
definitely.
okay, so
I
some
have
people
that.
experience it more than others. But about 10 years ago, when I was starting this work, I was out on a walk and I literally stopped myself in my tracks. And I said, if any of my friends talk to me the way that I talk to me, I'd punch them in the face. There's absolutely no way I would tolerate it. So I had to name her that day. And I named her Gretchen. Not that Gretchen is a bad name, but when I was young, there was a Gretchen in my life that bullied me. And I liked that it
No.
started with G. And the reason, what this gave me the ability to do, is to start creating space. Because Gretchen doesn't come around all the time. She comes around sometimes. And that gave me the ability to know what her playgrounds were. And when I had this space, just like the imposter syndrome, I could begin to turn towards her. Because the self critic is not a bad thing as long as we understand why
Okay.
it's showing up. So I'll give you one more super high level example. If I sit here and say, I'm the worst granddaughter, I'm a terrible granddaughter, not helpful. If I turn towards Gretchen and say, what are you here to show me? Oh, I want to block an hour of uninterrupted time this weekend to call my grandma. Oh, well, that's really valuable. Again, what
Yes.
is the framing? Why are you here? What are you here to show up and tell me? Or is it just cruelty ad nauseum on loop? Okay. So that leads to one, name your critic. Start to see when he, she, they come around. What's going on? What are they here to tell you? What's most important about that? Then you just heard me say on loop. Sometimes we can just get in a fear, self critical spiral and we can't get
Yes.
ourselves out of it. So, an important tool there is what I call nexting.
Okay.
And you just say, what if nobody shows up to this presentation? Next, what if I forget what I have to say? Next, what if they're not interested in it? Next, I have to do laundry. Oh, okay, we're just breaking that loop, because going back to the lodging those patterns, some of us have practiced self-critical thinking so many times it's just on loop, and the next
Hmm.
thing helps to unwire that pattern. That, combined with naming your critic and being able to engage it, can start help you mine the information that fear actually has for you.
I really like that. You're saying like nexting everything and then you had to do laundry. That's something that's actually needs to be done. So we can focus on that, and rather than spending our brain power on the critic.
Exactly.
I like that. I'm going to try that
Great.
nexting the things, because yeah, like most people, I definitely, I don't know, maybe not most people, like many people, I definitely have a self critic, and I think I might give it a name. Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's
And
it brings
maybe the next
levity.
thing.
So now, I mean, listen, it takes time. And again, as I said, I wasn't devoid of fear. I wanted to do this because it was pretty prevalent for me. But now, levity is really powerful. And with that space and name, even, I can kind of cock my eyebrow and be like, Gretchen, what are you showing up for? Okay, let's look like, and that takes time. It's not immediately that you get there, but it
Hmm.
does give you the ability to bring a little levity, to bring a little space, and then to engage it differently so that you can have your experience instead of be had by your experience.
Yeah, so you're more in the driver's seat
Mhm.
rather than reacting to things. Oh, I
Exactly.
really like that. I really like that. Yeah, actually, that's things that I would like to try to do, because I do find myself in, yeah, sometimes in the freeze mode. All of those things, fight, freeze, or even the fawn. I didn't really know what that was, and now I understand it. So maybe being able to next the fears, we can kind of get rid of some of that, hopefully. Um,
Sure.
yeah, and also the imposter syndrome. This has been really, really, really helpful. And what else can help people understand their fear and kind of propel them to success? Maybe the
Yeah.
fear can really help them.
I think the first and foremost is really understanding that fear is not the enemy. I mean, from and like it's so wired into us, even like on a macro level, fear has been used to divide us. Fear has been used by
Right.
government, by religion, by
Hmm.
business. Look at consumerism. You're not enough of X,
Hmm.
but if you buy Y, you will be.
Yep.
It is literally wired into us at such a deep level. So one thing is just being a little compassionate with yourself and understanding that like systems win if we're in fear, all sorts of
Yes.
systems. So first understanding that like you've done nothing wrong. This is a topic that hasn't been talked about. And it's a place where if you start to get curious, you only have rewarding in front of you. I mean, I would be willing to say life can be hard. Without understanding our relationship with fear, it's hard for hard's sake. When we
Yeah.
start to understand our relationship with fear, it can become hard for rewarding sake. The whole point here, really, if I boil all of my work down to one thing, when we're in fear, two things happen. One, we give our power away. And two, we're automatically reacting to circumstances to protect ourselves. When we understand our relationship with our fear, we can learn from it and then move from automatic reaction to intentional choice. This is where we can actually build the lives that we want to build. It's when we can be our authentic selves, which I actually think is our true purpose. And then when you're there, like law of attraction or otherwise, see what starts to present itself to your life when you're actually living from what you want versus what you should be doing or what others will perceive you as doing, and it just changes the game. So I think really the first thing is just the mindset that fear isn't the enemy. Fear isn't to be
Mhm.
overcome or conquered. Fear is actually, it's our greatest teacher if we can make it our ally. Just opening to that possibility might change. And guess what? It's going to be scary. Like, spoiler
Yeah.
alert. But
Yeah.
so is living under the grip of fear without understanding it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because so many things we can miss out on, if we're not willing to just meet the fear and understand it. Instead we can just kind of stay in, like you said, the comfort zone. So it sounds like that amygdala, that fear center of the brain, wants us in our comfort zone, or it's
Yeah,
safer.
because
In
it's
quotes, like
safer.
you said, safer.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of funny, but fear's entire job is to protect us. That I can't think of anything better at its job than fear. So again, from a rational perspective, that's your life and your survival. From an irrational perspective, that's making sure you stay exactly as you are. Which is why you hear about getting outside, the importance of getting outside of your comfort zone. That's where
Yes.
growth happens. And like growing pains are growing pains for a reason. And they're also like where we discover who we truly are. So, like to me, fear is actually, it's the gateway to our freedom, which is a
I
pretty
like
big
that.
thing.
Yes, because that's important. I really like that. And I also resonated with something you had said about how systems use the fear too to divide us, whether it's governments, religion, and like you said, consumerism. Always feel like, oh, okay, I'm not enough. I have to have this newest trendy item to be accepted, or I have to fix this about myself.
Well, totally. And
Those
if we
advertising messages are really powerful. Yeah.
very powerful. And if we bring it back to where we began with empathy, so communities are based in commonalities. Okay.
Right.
But fear has been used to divide us when I actually think it's the one thing that can unite us because fears cross all lines. And what my work has
Yes.
shown me, which I get into in the book a little bit, is these 8 basal fears, which doesn't mean we all have all 8, but it could be rejection, it could be fear of self worth, being who you actually are, fear of being alone. There's these basal fears. And if we actually understood them, then we would understand each other and there wouldn't be so much othering because we would
Yes.
actually see ourselves in each other. And so, empathy, by understanding our fear, empathy literally becomes the byproduct. And I think the one thing that actually could unite us at a time where it's pretty divisive.
It is pretty divisive. Yes, it is pretty. And then the empathy. The empathy is something, but it comes through getting through that fear.
And
Getting
understanding the
through that
fear.
fear and
Yeah,
understanding it.
yeah,
It's really thought provoking because it can be on a micro level about ourselves and a macro in as far as community and society in general.
absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of reasons why we should be looking at our fear.
Yes. And all we can really do is just for ourselves. We can't tell other people you have to do this, so we can do it.
No. Change begins within. And I can say one of the kind of the unintended consequences that I wasn't expecting was because it's not fear for fear's sake. I mean, I call
Right.
myself a fear technician. It's not just to stand in people's fear all day, it's where fear takes people to. The through point. And I use the word freedom, I use the word aliveness, the word contentment. Like what understanding your fear gives you access to is so beautiful. And if we could start to model that, because I kind of believe that modeling is the greatest form of leadership. When somebody shows you what's possible, other people can say, hey, I want that. And so, my personal idealistic goal is if more people understood their relationship with fear, that would have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
That would change the divisiveness. It would change the level of connection and understanding. Maybe people would even listen to each other a little bit more because your truth isn't challenged by somebody else's. These things can coexist when we know what we
Exactly.
stand for. And so, yeah, I'm pretty hopeful.
Well, that's great. Well, hopefully that hope can be contagious because we could all use it right now,
Yes.
for sure, for sure. And now, before we close, well, you have a book that is out as well,
Yeah,
Unmasking
it's called
Fear,
Unmasking Fear.
and people can get that, I assuming, on Amazon or on your website.
Absolutely, either place.
And you also do coaching as well.
I do coaching, I do speaking events, I lead, facilitate workshops. So it's a variety of elements to get the word out there.
Okay, and if somebody is interested in working with you or booking you for a speaking engagement, where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best place is my website, which is Forage, which is courage with an F, because I
Okay.
believe that fear is courage unrealized. So it's forage.io.
Okay, so Forage, forage.io.
Yes,
And people
exactly.
can connect with you there. Oh, that's great. That's great. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. It was really interesting. I enjoyed this conversation. It's very helpful to me.
Awesome. Thank
And
you, Dawn.
before we sign off, is there anything else you'd like to just share with the people watching or listening to this?
Yeah, I think, well, one, I want to thank you for having these conversations
You're
because it's
welcome.
really important and helpful out there. And I know even built into your title, it seems like what your why is. So thank you so much. Um, and I think the invitation is just, it can be scary and it's super rewarding. So just opening to that fear actually might be on your side creates a new pathway forward.
I really like that. I really like that. And it's really thought provoking. It's going to help me. I'm listen to this once it's out and re-listen to what you're saying because it's really important. It's something we don't often even think about too. A lot
No,
of it is just so unconscious. All right. Well,
exactly.
thank you again, Guryan, for coming on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for having me and same to you.
Oh, thank you.